Hello everyone, my name is Mahdie Nazari. I'm a graduate student in Tehran University and welcome to this video. As you can see, I'm going to present my master's thesis chapter 2, which is about my literature review. My exact title is Usability Assessing of University of Tehran's LMS using Nielsen's checklist. And I'm going to cover these areas briefly in this presentation. So let's get started. What is an e-learning? Most people will answer by saying that a learning that is based on electronic environments, which is true. E-learning is a complex of activities that includes using the electronic technology to help the learning process. Different kinds of e-learnings are online courses, hybrid learning, distance learning, virtual learning, and blended learning. In most of the organizations, e-learning is taking place through the LMS to be more sufficient. Some of these learning management systems are Moodle, .lrn, Sakai, WebCity, Blackboard, OpenACS, Ilias, and OpenUSS. What are the learning objects? By a definition that Mason and Rehak gave in 2003, a digitized entity which can be used, reused, or referenced during technology-supported learning is a learning object. As e-learning gained wider adoption, a number of new approaches to content development were explored, often derived from computer science, with one such approach being the concept of LO, which obviously stands for learning objects. The concept is borrowed from software development, where the object-oriented programming approach defines software in terms of objects, which contain data, attributes, and methods. Programs are constructed by assembling objects and specifying how they communicate with each other. Learning objects seem like a logical step in applying this model to e-learning. Prominent edtech blogger Stefan Dons once stated that the properties of sine wave functions remain constant from institution to institution. We can assume that each institution's description of sine wave function is more or less the same as other institutions. So we have thousands of similar descriptions of sine wave functions, but the world does not need all that similar descriptions available online. One or maybe a dozen at most is enough. Learning objects were potentially beneficial for learners, educators, learning platform providers, commercial companies, and publishers, so they generated a good deal of interest. But soon it faced failure, and some of the reasons are over-engineering, definition debates, and most importantly, the reusability paradox. Let's discuss two main areas in e-learning now. Learning standards is the first one. By the turn of the millennium, universities were engaging in some form of e-learning, even if only as a support tool for campus learners. This maturing of e-learning gave rise to the development of several standards, particularly IMS, which stands for Instructional Management System. The aim was to address one of the problems LAMP 2018 identified. That was platforms and content developers all used different formats, and so it was difficult to take e-learning content from one context and deploy it elsewhere. Many universities deployed more than one learning platform, so they could not easily transfer content even within their own institution. IMS, therefore, set about developing standards to describe content, assessment, courses, and more ambitiously, learning design. There are two main areas where interoperability is key: content and tools. By specifying standards for tools, it allows an educator to use a variety of web-based tools and plug these into the standard platform and pass data between them. Interoperability of content was addressed by SCORM, which stands for Shareable Content Object Reference Model. The aim of SCORM was to define a means of constructing content so that it could be deployed in a platform that was SCORM compliant. Dublin Core Metadata Initiative (DCMI) was formed in the 1990s. from a workshop series focusing on different metadata approaches. Metadata was used to describe a piece of content, such as e-learning objects, so that it could be discovered and deployed easily and hopefully automatically. Learning Management Systems, 2002. For 2002, the selection is the dominant and arguably most successful education technology, the Learning Management System, also known as the Virtual Learning Environment, VLE. The LMS provided an enterprise solution for e-learning for universities. Prior to the LMS, e-learning provision was realized through a variety of tools, for instance, a bulletin board for communications, a content management system, and home-created web pages. The LMS offered a neat collection of the most popular tools, any one of which might not be as good as the best of the breed-specific tools, but good enough. And this is another example of the good enough principle. LMS uptake grew significantly over the first half of the decade, and by 2005, nearly all higher education institutions had deployed an LMS, but only 37% had a single one, with others operating multiple systems with the intention to move a single system, according to the OECD. And this is a quote or so-called word of wisdom by Jacob Nielsen, which says, "Ultimately, users visit your website for its content. Everything else is just a backdrop, and the best websites are better than reality." History of e-learning in the world and in Iran. The word virtual learning, also known as e-learning, soon became popular on many sites, and many people used these systems to transfer their knowledge. These tutorials are originally created as simple chat sites and made available to users, but gradually personal blogs made it possible for the public to create free space, and many people used these blogs to create their tutorials and share them with others. With the advent of the internet, the first undergraduate and graduate courses were created online by the New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1984 in the field of engineering, where learners were also awarded degrees. The first online training was provided by the University of Phoenix in 1989, and the Virtual University of California opened more than 1,500 courses. In this type of training, it does not matter what time and place the learners are. Now let's take a look at the history of e-learning in Iran. At the end of the 90s, the virtual education software for the learning management system was on the agenda of the University of Tehran. But in 2001, the virtual education site of the University of Tehran was launched for daily learners of the university only for 9 courses. In the same year, the Ministry of Science, Research and Technology announced the establishment of an internet university. Subsequently, a number of universities announced that they had put the launch of e-learning on their agenda. And here's a glance at 3 learning theories: behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism. Behaviorism. As its name implies, behaviorism focuses on how people behave. It evolved from a positivist worldview related to cause and effect. In simple terms, action produces reaction. In education, behaviorism examines how learners behave while learning. The emphasis in behaviorism is on that which is observable and not on the mind or cognitive processes. The development of behaviorism is frequently associated with Ivan Pavlov, famous for his experiments with dogs, food, and audible stimuli like bell. In his experiments, dogs learned to associate food or feeding time with the sound of the bell and began to salivate. Cognitivism. Cognitivism has been considered a reaction to the rigid emphasis by behaviorists on predictive stimulus and response. Cognitive science draws from psychology, biology, neuroscience, computer science, and philosophy to explain the working of the brain, as well as the levels of cognitive development that form the foundation of learning and knowledge acquisition. Cognitive theorists promoted the concept that the mind has an important role in learning and sought to focus on what happens in between the occurrence of environmental stimulus and student response. They saw the cognitive processes of the mind, such as motivation and imagination, as critical elements of learning that bridge environmental stimuli and student responses. For example, Noam Chomsky in 1959 wrote a critical review of Skinner's behaviorist work in which he raised the importance of creative mental processes that are not observable in the physical world. And as you can see in the slides, Edward Thorndike, Skinner, and Watson are some other behaviorism theorists. The future of cognitivism is particularly interesting as more advanced online software evolves into adaptive and personalized learning applications that seek to integrate artificial intelligence and learning analytics into instructions. Constructivism, 1997. Piaget, 1964, proposed the processes by which learners, particularly children, construct knowledge. This can be seen as a reaction against the behaviorist models created by psychologists such as Skinner, 1963. Constructivism emphasizes the experience and role of the individual in developing concepts. Vygotsky in 1978 developed this concept further with the idea of social constructivism. The proposition that learning is not an individual exercise, but is developed through social interaction and couched in language. An influential notion from Vygotsky for many constructivists is the zone of proximal development, ZPD, which is the difference between what a learner can do with help, what they can do unaided, and what they cannot do. The ZPD is where a learner can progress if they are aided by an educator. This highlights the social and dialogic aspects of learning by emphasizing the interaction between educators and learners. What is usability? Since user is totally apart from the tools needed to complete tasks on a computer screen, usability is a construct inherent in HCI, which stands for human-computer interaction. Whether usability is explicitly recognized by the user as a characteristic of a course site, or whether the user simply has a difficult, unpleasant experience as they try to accomplish their assigned tasks, usability is always a factor in the design of online course sites. It is always a factor due to the separation between the physical environment, the learner, the virtual environment, the course content, and course management system tools that the learners uses to interact with the content and participate in class activities. Usability or ease of use is fundamental to site design. Site usability is defined as the way that the user actually navigates, finds information, and interacts with the site. This is a definition by Godot, Cutler, and Wood. Usability means that people who use the product can do so quickly and easily to accomplish their own tasks. This is by Duma and Reddish. And Nielsen has another definition which says ease of use is the first priority of interface design. And Rosen and Carroll 2002 identify three perspectives that contribute to the general concept of usability, which are human performance, time and errors, human cognition, mental models of plans and actions, collaboration, group dynamics, and workplace content. Usability and web-based instruction. To succeed in web-based instruction, learners need an interface that has a high degree of usability. Relating Rosen and Carroll's 2002 perspectives to an online course site, first, learners need an interface that facilitates human performance and makes good use of learners' time while minimizing errors. A usable course site allows learners easy access to course information so they can locate the materials and documents they need to facilitate learning. Learners should be able to see their options, how to achieve their goals, and how to accomplish desired tasks. Second, learners need to be able to make a mental model of the site and plan their studies. Third, learners need to feel part of a class, whether through discussion or group activities. Numerous research studies have documented that users become disoriented and lost in the hyperspace, thus unable to find the information they need. Historically, website design has been driven by either a technological or aesthetics perspective rather than by the needs of the user. Awareness of this potential problem raises the question of whether the instructional effectiveness of websites is affected by the extent to which they meet usability standards. Simply stated, the creation of effective, satisfying courses is not rooted in the production of materials using either print or digital technologies. Instead, creation of effective, satisfying courses should be rooted in human perception, instructional principles, and good design. Good design includes the ability of the designer to understand the user's task and to create an interface that allows the user to grasp its meaning and create a mental map of the space. Learners must be able to access and retrieve relevant course materials, navigate through the website, to interact with course elements, complete assignments, and finally construct meaning to achieve learning outcomes. Usability and aesthetics. Kuroshu and Kashimura 1995 conducted a correlational analysis of the evaluation data of the determinants of apparent and inherent usability in a screen layout and design. Apparent usability is related to the aesthetic appeal of a website as opposed to the inherent usability, which is related to its functionality. They concluded that users are strongly affected by the aesthetics of a website even as they evaluate its functionality. About Nielsen's checklists, what do they cover? In addition to the Nielsen's 10 user interface design heuristics, there's 11 design heuristics for learning interfaces as well. I have put all the 11 items into 4 groups to assess them as my research aims and questions, and they are interactions, interface dynamics, aesthetics, and interface content. But more specifically for the learning interfaces, these items are relevance of media and reduction of extraneous load, learners' control and freedom, support for learning objectives, alignment with a specific learner's need, appropriateness of look and feel, support for the cognitive aspects of the learning, support for the affective aspects of the learning, media and tools appropriateness, accessibility, usability, feedback, and responsiveness. Now let's talk about the usability history and the World Usability Day. Usability is a very important concept that User Experience Professional Association, UXPA, even named a day after it in order to promote usability values, usability engineering, user-centric design, global usability, and the responsibility of each user to make anything better. World Usability Day is celebrated annually on the second Thursday in November in all the participant countries. In the field of usability in my country, Iran, many research have been done in the field of health information systems and multimedia applications as well. In the last decade, research have been conducted on the usability of the radiology IS, emergency IS, medical record admission IS, hospital IS, digital libraries, and the usability of banking websites. It should be noted that the World Usability Day has been held continuously since 2010 by those interested in the field of user experience and usability in Iran. The first year's focus was on the design of usable products and services. I could also remark on the fact that Iran is an official member of UXPA. The profession of usability as we know it largely today started in the 1980s. From 1911's that Frederick Taylor publishes Principles of Scientific Management, which describes time and motion studies and methods for improving industrial efficiency, to 2012 that Jeff Sauer and Lewis published the first book on the statistical analysis of the usability data and more. There is even an infographic of the last 100 years of usability by Jeff Sauer in uxmass.com website. And these are the titles of some related research done in Iran prior to mine, and they are all journal articles. As it is crystal clear that a hospital's information system is vital, there has been some research done in this area. So these studies are mainly discussing about the usability of the information systems. But since HIS is not definitely a learning system, They mostly use the other heuristic checklist of Nielsen, which has 10 items, and they are visibility of system status, match between system and the real world, user control and freedom, consistency and standards, error prevention, recognition rather than recall, flexibility and efficiency of use, aesthetics and minimalist design, help users recognize, diagnose and recover from the errors, and finally help and documentation. The first journal article's title is Evaluation of the Usability of Admission and Medical Record Information System, a Heuristic Evaluation. In this descriptive cross-sectional study, 5 health information technology experts evaluated admission and medical record systems AMRS in a hospital information system using heuristic evaluation. Then the system usability problems were categorized according to Nielsen's 10 usability principles, and their severity were determined. The second one is about user and usability of information systems, a literature review. This review study was conducted using the thematic search on the online databases such as PubMed, ProQuest, Google Scholar, Science Direct, Scopus, and professional websites and books. Articles and content were selected based on the similarity of content and their adaptation to the study objectives that were 50 full-text articles, 12 books, and 6 scientific materials. These materials were studied in detail, and 38 of them were used to compile the final version of the study. And the third one is about usability evaluation of an emergency information system, a heuristic evaluation again. The method of the third research was using Nielsen's 10 usability principles as well with 3 trained evaluators, independent from each other, evaluating the corresponding subsystem and determining the severity of identified problems. All the problems identified by independent evaluators in this research were collected in a single list, and the mean severity of each problem was calculated. The fourth is titled Usability Evaluation of Hospital Information Systems in Hospitals Affiliated with Mahdie University of Medical Sciences, Iran. This descriptive analytical study was conducted in 2010. The population consisted of 110 users of hospital information system in 1 general and 2 specialized hospitals affiliated with Mahdie University of Medical Sciences. Simple random sampling was used to select the interviewees. Data was collected by Bahata-Churji usability scale, which includes usability, continued intention to use HIS, perceived usefulness and benefits, and user satisfaction. The collected data was analyzed using descriptive statistics and Spearman correlation coefficient in SPSS software. The fifth one is about usability evaluation of a radiology information system. This cross-sectional descriptive study in 2015 uses heuristic evaluation method to evaluate the usability of RIS used in the teaching hospitals of Tehran University of Medical Sciences. Usability of radiology information systems was investigated based on the usability principles developed by Nielsen. And these are some related research done around the world. The first one is titled Peek Through Customization, Example-Based and Content Sharing for a Learning Management System. And it talks about past learning and usage of LMSs, their routine for setting up and customizing a new course, their tendency to share their configurations with peers and colleagues, and common challenges they had encountered throughout these tasks. Brief demographic, questionnaire, semi-structured interviews, formative interviews, usability evaluation was used in this research. The second one is about usability in blended learning programs within health professions education. The purpose of this study is to develop a foundational understanding of how BLPs have generally been and are currently being evaluated in the field of health professions education in relation to the concept of usability and its primary components, which are effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. A scoping review guided by the framework outlined by Arksey and O'Malley 2005 was conducted. The Prisma SCR checklist illustrated by Tricot 2018 was also corroborated when completing this study. The databases searched were Scopus and ERIC EBSCO. Searches were carried out in an iterative manner, where new terms were identified and added to the search between September 17, 2018 and September 21, 2018. The screening was conducted via the use of a questionnaire guide and in significant collaboration with academic librarians and co-authors. Charted data was validated by a co-author. Thematic analysis was then conducted by 2 independent reviewers. The third is about usability study of a simplified e-learning design that integrates Google Apps and the Lalima LMS. This research assesses the user's perception, efficiency of the system, and ease of use of the e-learning course design that integrates the use of the Google and UH services with the Lalima learning management system through a simplified user-centered design. They used Think Aloud process, mouse movement monitoring, pre-post service collected demographic data. Data analysis included task completion rate in both quantitative and qualitative user evaluations, and they did 3 rounds of usability testings. The number 4 journal article's title was Enhancing User Experience Through Customization of UI Design. Their variables were customizable UI, adaptive UI, perceived ease of use, PEOU, user satisfaction, clarity of the application, control over the application, and user's mental model. For these purposes, they used 1 to 10 scale questionnaires and interviews about the user interface design of Dropbox and Google Drive. Interviews were conducted while the respondents used each of the interfaces to complete 2 tasks. Usability of the sites were analyzed in terms of controllability and efficiency. And the last one's title is Beneath a Learning Management System: Understanding the Human Information Interaction in Information Systems. Ambiguous instructions, inadequate information, lack of sound, interface design problems, participants' experience, and information gaps were the variables to assess. A survey questionnaire was used for the views of the participants and is analyzed with a focus on only the human information interaction issues. And here's my conceptual model. In explaining the framework that I have drawn, I must say that in my opinion, first we have learners at the University of Tehran who are faced with the e-learning system in terms of teaching and learning. In the relevant section of this study, which assesses the usability of the e-learning system, and the usability is an area arising from the field of human-computer interaction. This goal is achieved by adapting it to Nielsen's heuristic model. So, in this presentation, I briefly discussed my literature review by talking about what e-learning, learning objects, learning standards, learning management systems, learning theories, usability, and Nielsen's checklists are. I took a glance at the history of both e-learning and usability, and reviewed some related research that are already done in this field to get a sense of it. And I also presented my conceptual model at the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attention. Please like and subscribe and share your ideas in the comment section below.